5 days ago, Antonio had turned the sign on the door of Il Labirinto di Papel to closed, explaining that he was out of town for a book conference in Valencia. He would be back in a week, it read. But in reality, Antonio had never left the city. He had been using this time to study his next subject, Daniela Fernández, a talented novelist and painter, as meticulously as a scholar. He observed that Daniela's day started with a visit to the corner CAF, Cantante, a place near Plaza de Pontevedra that breathed life into the neighborhood. With its lively chatter and the tantalizing aroma of freshly brewed espresso. Here, she would sip her morning CAF con leche. Lost in a world of her own, her thoughts already starting to paint a new masterpiece. She would leave Cantante and head into a different CAF, overlooking Plaza de Espaa to begin her morning painting session. She would position herself in a corner, her eyes flitting between her canvas and the hustle of the coffee shop. Her subjects were often the barrister shardwinking people, who brewed coffee with an artistry that matched Daniela's. Her paintings were an echo of the café soul, vibrant and bustling. She would paint the steam swirling out of the espresso machine, the flick of the barista's wrist as she artfully poured milk into a cup, the steady drip of coffee into a glass pot, the scrunch of their brows as they tried to get an order right. Every coffee shop had a rhythm, a unique melody that played out in the routine of making coffee and serving customers and the hum of conversations. And Daniela, with her keen eye and nimble fingers, would deftly capture this symphony of moments on her canvas. The finished paintings were a sight to behold. The CAF owners were always overjoyed to receive these snapshots of their everyday lives, transforming them into pieces of art. They would hang them proudly, a testament to the beauty of their mundane routine, as seen through Daniela's artistic lens. Daniela would pack up her painting supplies and head toward the Rose Garden, a verdant oasis in the middle of the bustling city. The park, with its towering trees and melodious birdsongs, was her sanctuary, an escape from the cacophony of city life. Arriving at her preferred bench, she would set up her laptop, immersing herself in the world she was weaving for her novel. With a focused gaze and swift keystrokes, she began her dance with words. Each click of the keyboard was a symphony of thought, the notes of her imagination, forming sentences, then paragraphs, then chapters. Hours seemed to fly by as Antonio watched Daniela, deeply engrossed in her work at the park. The focused furrow of her brow, the swift dance of her fingers across the laptop keys, and the occasional soft smile on her lips told him she was crafting something she felt deeply about. From his hidden spot, he could almost feel the passion and dedication with which she approached her writing. Every subtle expression on her face seemed like a hint to the ebb and flow of her narrative. And with every observation, he became more entrenched in his fixation. This was the woman who would become his next victim. As the sun began to dip and cast long shadows, Daniela packed away her laptop. He watched as she transitioned from the static bench, stretching slightly before setting off on the winding paths of the park. To Antonio, it seemed like she used these walks to clear her mind, perhaps mulling over her writings from the day. When twilight began to envelope the park, Daniela headed toward the local bakery. Even from a distance, Antonio could detect the rich, welcoming scent of fresh bread and pastries. He noticed her casual exchange with the barquera brief, friendly interaction brief as she left, dinner in hand, making her way home. Antonio watched from a distance, each action of Daniela's becoming a clue, each habit a piece of an unfolding puzzle. Every detail of her routine was memorized, contributing to the understanding of her rhythm, her lifestyle. The familiarity of her routine was comforting, an assurance that the time for his plan was approaching. Once she was home, Daniela's routine didn't end. It simply shifted gears. Her apartment transformed into her studio. The large, open space, dominated by a canvas that stretched from one end of the apartment to the other. She would place her bakery-bought dinner on a small table, barely giving it a glance as she lost herself in her work. Through the grand windows of her apartment, Antonio watched Daniela's every movement. He admired her dedication, her passion. It was a performance, a dance between the artist and her canvas. And he was an involuntary audience, caught in the spectacle of her creativity. The the picturesque cityscape that was taking shape intrigued him. The architectural precision of the buildings, the play of colors capturing various moods and lighting. Sections of the painting seemed to transition from dawn to dusk, reflecting the city's transformations throughout the day. The sheer scale of the canvas, coupled with the intricacies of the scene, was impressive even to Antonio. As the night deepened, Daniela continued her work, her silhouette a striking figure against the backdrop of the expansive canvas. She seemed to be painting with an urgency, a desperation, that Antonio could not help but notice. His anticipation was building, mirroring the intensity with which Daniela poured herself into her art. He was just days away from making his move,